important să avem o viziune corectă asupra web-ului, pentru că ceea ce mulți dintre noi fac este să ajungă în zona asta, de sus, la suprafața unui iceberg ascuns, care este web-ul ascuns. Și unde la suprafață putem găsi date care sunt accesibile de mutare-căutare, precum Google, Bing, Yahoo, sau în tezaure foarte mari, cum e Wikipedia și altele. În web-ul ascuns, cel care nu e accesibil de oricine, dar sau de obicei informații schimbate de companii, între ele de instituții, cele care sunt, cu prevederea acestea, sunt parolate și găsim acolo o mulțime de date de natură linguală. Și mai există un web încă și mai scufundat, în abis, să zic, unde stau informații legale la servicii ascunse, încriptări ale comunicațiilor personale și așa mai departe. Și trebuie să știm că la suprafață există aproximativ 1 miliarde de documente, ceea ce face cam 4% din web-ul total, restul de 96% fiind nevizibil accesului public. E bine, din acest mare web, noi putem culege date de deasupra, din web-ul de suprafață, și nu ne sunt accesibile cele de desubt. Desigur, nu ne gândim deloc să umblăm aici, dar web-ul ascuns de la nivelul ăsta ar putea fi folosit pentru scopurile noastre, în cele care ați auzit asta. Dacă ne referim, bine, desigur, acest web e format dintr-o multitudine de tipuri de date. Multe din ele de natură numerică, de natură multimedia, vizuală, dar și de natură textuală.
The textual web is also shaped as an iceberg. There too we have hidden data and data that lies above the surface. The textual web shows us various things like the global volume of business data, which doubles every 1.2 years. By 2020, there will be 450 billion daily business transactions, which is huge. Zettabytes is 1,000 power 7. Now we have 2.7 zettabytes of data. You can see the doubling rate. As for the English-speaking users, they account for 1/3 of all the users. In order to reach 19% of consumers online, a company should translate texts in 48 languages. And from there, we can see the importance of machine translation. Of course, we live in the era of big data. The big data paradigm was mentioned before today by Ms. Voicu. There are several ways to see big data. You can find many pictures trying to put this reality into artistic term, this new paradigm, meaning unorganized data from which we hope to extract stable information. They stand for laws, new regulated information. In Europe, for instance, we are trying to introduce a system of e-metering. We have such an initiative in Romania too. It is a system based on sensors. Sorry, says the speaker. Sensors will be incorporated in people's flats or houses, and they will generate a huge volume of data. And various companies, such as electricity companies, can learn about how to save energy and how to transfer energy more efficiently in the country. Another possibility regards goods on the shelves of the supermarket and how to make the display more efficient. we can collect data about that and make display space more effective and more efficient in terms of use. Of course, when it comes to big data, a lot of data is textual. So we have the big challenge of big data, which is translation. To translate documents from the web, we would need a lot of professional translators, and we already know about the difficulties hidden in translation. There are few translators, they cost a lot of money, they can only translate 2,000 to 3,000 words per day, whereas companies could use millions of words, of translated words per day, and machine translation is still imperfect. What would be the combination or the solution, a combination between machine and human translation? Human translators can review and correct various morphosyntactical flaws or misleading meanings or culture, or make the cultural adjustment of a text. The corrected translation or the reviewed translation can be uploaded or uplinked to a cloud, a world cloud, and this is how automatic or machine translation can be improved in this continuous cycle, this of improvement made up of translators throughout the world that would be willing to upload all this information, leading finally or resulting finally in improved translation. Of course, we've talked about how the machine can learn from the data. This machine is data-driven, and so is learning. Machine translation is about learning, so to speak, from the data. We still don't know how this learning happens. We don't know that about cognitive systems either. It is a simulation of human learning. This is what the machine does. So the idea is, show me what I need to do, and I will. This is the thinking behind the machine. As for the linguistic resources, they amount to any text from any field. As for a system that works bilingually, we need texts from in the source language than in the target language, and in both. We need a collection of paired documents that can show the machine how some words are contextually translated. Of course, this is the very role of ELRC, focusing on accessing data in all languages, mainly when it comes to important text in the EU. Now, let me give you an example of how a machine could learn from data. Imagine we are Romanians. We are. Our language is spoken in this area. This is Moldova, Romania, two parts of these countries. Northeast of Serbia is also a territory where Romanian is spoken. Parts of Hungary and Bulgaria. And suppose we would like to learn Basque language. It is spoken in the northern part of Spain and the southeast of France. Well, in the Basque language, we have a set of books. I am patient. I have a prodigious memory, well, more than any human being, but let's imagine this is our capacity as human beings. We start reading in a language we don't know. Of course, I can grasp some things from reading, a certain vocabulary, because I can find some repetition behind words. I can also understand some variations based on the same words. This means to develop an intuition of the morphology and some combinations of words that come together, clustered, more often than what is given by probabilities. meaning what is given by the rate, which is the multiplication of the two elements. And I'm speaking here also about colloquial phrases that emerge often. So this means a bag of words. This is the name of the approach. Words, many words in a language, and I try to extract from there some rate of frequency. Then I have books in my own language, in Romanian. I know Romanian, of course, I'm a speaker. And someone makes parallel translations available to me. So part of the books are translated in Romanian. Something happens in my mind, and I start learning Basque language with no teacher at all, just looking at the pages that mean the same thing in one language and another. That will help me find similitudes. And being helped by this prodigious memory and some degree of intelligence, I can pair the information and create a translation system.
Obviously, this approach to translation is completely different from what Mr. Papuchian was saying in the morning. He was speaking about a paradigm in which I first understand the text in the source language, I decodify it up to the level of an abstract representation, and from that abstract representation, I regenerate a sentence in a target language. This is therefore a translation based on transfer or semantic representations. The machine in the modern systems doesn't do that. The machine doesn't understand the 1 iota of the text. It just looks for similarities. It looks for parallel data, and it looks for similarities, and it makes up a sentence which should sound good in the target language. And now, if we consider the linguistic data and what these should be, any document is good which contains words, or preferably sentences or phrases. Novels, magazines, journals, reports, flyers, speeches, and so on and so forth. Web pages, of course, blogs, because they represent the language of second-hand writers, non-professional writers, but it is our language. And corpuses are huge data collections. And in parallel, we know what this means from Mr. Tufish's presentation. And comparable, and I'll talk to you about what this means immediately, and other data. Collocations, a list of collocations, lists of words, n-grams, which means n words that stay together. Frequency tables of words and expressions, and of course bilingual dictionaries. All these can make up linguistic data. Translations, they are the most important. Translations in 3 languages or n languages. The initiative we were invited to take part in today refers to the language of the administration and or the government, central, local government, and we spoke about adapting the words to the field. If we use this in order to learn the administrative language, you will, of course, be a disaster in many fields, because you simply don't master the specific terminology of that field. So you need a specialization. You have to structure your collection in domains, and your machine should get familiar to that. These are aligned translations, and I'm sure you are familiar with that. And also, we mentioned collections of comparable texts. These are not identical. In other words, the contents, semantically speaking, the contents is not the same. It's not a translation from one language into another, but this is information bearing on the same topic, written in different moments in time. And here is an example taken from Wikipedia. telecommunications. So these texts aren't necessarily translations, but they refer to the same topic. And this was discovered as valuable in the translation systems. This was discovered by two Romanians, and this is a paper which is now a term of reference in the specialized literature. This table was already shown to you by Virginica. The year 2012. There are some copies of the book I noticed here, and we are somewhere here. And we would like to move forward to this category. We don't aspire to go directly to the category of English. Hopefully, the effort carried out by ELRC will help Romania move to the upper category. And this is a collection of monolingual collections. The Corolla, it is a contemporary Romanian language corpus. We would like to create a corpus of texts written in Romanian since the end of World War II, 1945-2017. It is one of the priority projects of the Romanian Academy. Now the IT Institute of Iași works on this, and I belong to that, but the same effort is carried out here, is made here in Bucharest. And I'm giving you this example, a collection of monolingual texts. Why it is important to have such a collection, not only texts that represent parallel translations or comparable texts. Let me show you which is the methodology of putting together such a corpus. There is a portal for the moment which is in charge of the communications, of course, storing in the memory all the whole corpus. There are aspects of processing and access for the users. For the moment, this is hosted on a server of the Romanian Academy in Iași. By the end of the year, all this data collection will be transferred to the Research Institute of Mannheim, which is the creator of the huge German corpus. We won the project, which is financed by the Humboldt Foundation. Those servers over there are dedicated to us, and at the end of the project, they will be brought here in the country. So what we built is a factory of words. A number of entities contribute to the building of this factory. They already hold lexical data. We process this and we introduce everything into this portal. Who are the providers or the holders of primary data? Well, publishing houses, authors, bloggers, web pages, radio studios, because the corpus also has a oral component. So there are apps that know how to interpret the human voice. It is important to recognize the fact that the EU will, at a certain point, will need systems that translate the voices, maybe even instantaneously. Of course, universities, ministries, public administrations, every holder of documents that are prepared to donate the data. You don't lose control over the data. You, of course, have them. Not even the copyrights are chipped in anyway. They are only used in a patriotic manner because they serve a national purpose, a cultural, scientific, technical purpose, without losing the semantic content, which is anyway of no interest to anybody else but the specialists in the field. And here you see, between inverted commas, data. Why? Because the linguists might wonder, how is a text just data? As if the text were a number or a sequence of numbers, because this is what ultimately this is, a series of characters which are processed as such. So these are data that can be computed in a computer. This smiling young lady could be a colleague of mine from Iași. She makes a number of phone calls in order to unveil data. Sometimes the people answering at the other end are not very kind. So she will make phone calls, and many times she falls on a person that is quite kind and who is ready to offer the CDs, which will then, with data, which will then go to the portal. And there is a process of cleaning and completing metadata. Our specialists do that. But now we're looking for volunteers as well. We are in the process of spreading this action around universities. We found students, college students, especially in humanistic colleges. They will clean the data. It is a semi-automatic process, because the formatting needs to be gotten rid of. The headers need to be thrown to the trash bin. We need articles that send the reader to other links, and then the aligning left or right needs to go away as well as the separations. I don't need the words that are split into syllables. So this is somehow partly done automatically, but by hand as well. And what is most important, it has already been mentioned here, the characters need to be correct and standardized. Why so? Because there are an enormous number of characters that need to be standardized in the Romanian texts. And then there's the completing of the metadata. What does this mean? Auxiliary information to the documents. You see here a relatively small set of elements. We follow this more or less standard introduced by Clarin, a European project, which gives us a list, a document title, author name, publication date, etc., and which again is more or less automated. So right now we do it manually. Once in the portal with the metadata completed, each document in a separate file, the documents go to a complicated process of annotations. The token is opened. This is what we call it in the IT language, the words, lexical units, the separation between words and sentences, adapting them to the respective category of speech, and then we need to find the nominal groups as well as elements of syntax, and maybe further on going towards semantics and higher up. All these is done if there are processors capable to operate on the primary text. Let me give you the example of 3 such processes taken from our web page, from our institute in Iași. Post-tagging. Nominal groups are recognized here. Words that create nominal groups. You don't see here very well, but this is a fragmentation, segmentation that pays a lot of attention to the syntactic dependencies. So it's as if we have a syntactic tree. This is why here in this diagram these disks are colored darker and darker. This is a pipeline process which is completed in a linear manner. More and more annotations are added, and the text in the end is full of information, auxiliary information. And now this information is stored in the portal and it is sent to the users, who could be researchers of the language, professors or teachers who teach Romanian, people who would like to learn Romanian, and many others. Here you have an example of similarities. To be in English and various contexts, these are systems and programs that allow you to look for words given in contexts, especially when the word comes together with other words. Even more so, the programs can be used in order to discover the models of the language used in training the machine learn. And in this diagram, in this graph, you have the relationship between the quantity of texts, number of pages of text, billions of pages, and the quality of the translation on the y-axis. This is the so-called blue score, which more or less assesses the quality of the translation. And you see there are two lines that are represented on the graph. This is a specific domain or specific field, and this is the general field. Here the process is much slower in general terms as compared to the information received in a specific domain or area. This is an information that Mr. Tufi shared with you already. You see the scale from 1 to 10, and I received this line from Damian Marcu, a researcher from California, the University of Southern California. He was amongst those who launched this company, Language Weaver. I saw the name mentioned already this morning. Language Weaver has a branch in Cluj. It is a Romanian company which makes automated translations. And here you see the development of the field these last few years. See what technologies appeared and are available. Language Weaver Translate was bought by SDL Translate. Mark works there. And more recently, there are numerous systems of commercial translation, or translations for the world of commerce. But if you take one step back when assessing the quality of the translations, I will show you a slide which illustrates what happens to Romanian when translated by Google. This is a table illustrating the publications in the statistical translations. This is what we focused on today, the number of publications and the quantity of words translated by the automated systems, the commercial systems. More than 100 billion words per day. I was curious to see how the word mass is translated from Romanian. In Romanian, masa has a number of meanings, and I was curious to see how this is put into English. So the net weight of the lorry and the compact mass or crowd of people, and the masa, the table in the living room. Dining room table, net weight, mass, and table. You see this? So the machine, as you can see, is already capable of grasping the meaning of the word. So do trust this technology because it is on the right path. Maybe we will get to that point sometime in the future. We don't want to replace the nice ladies cooped up there in the interpretation booth what they do there in the booth is impossible to be done by a machine. And anyway, literature, fiction cannot be translated by a machine ever. Literary translation and interpretation is a creative process. So, but let's think of a text in Arabic. I'd like to know what that text is about. I'd love a machine to tell me at least the gist of that text, the core meaning. So we don't need huge efforts to have access to these resources. The resources exist in publishing houses, in ministries, in European administrations, in the local, national government, hospitals, schools, universities, on the web, etc.
But also in publishing houses where we can find books, newspaper articles, cultural magazines, all kinds of reports from all kinds of fields. But also in parallel translations, such as the offices of the national agencies or foreign relationships agencies on the web, universities in contracts from various institutions, multinationals. They all have these documents, cooperation contracts or dissertations and thesis articles. So we should just have the goodwill to collect all this information. My final message. This iceberg, similar to the circulation of textual data, I showed you the iceberg before, which is the next ray of the textual web. What we can do now is to collect data only from the part above the water, the visible part. You can help us reach the invisible part of the iceberg. That is why we should see data from a different angle, repack it and give it to us. Sometimes anonymize data, if names or various information should stay confidential. You can put a generic name or a fictitious name. This is not of interest to us. We are not interested in the semantic load of a text, just the language. You can also help us to turn linguistic resources collection in a continual process, something organized, something well put in place. And that is why we have this wonderful initiative right now, because the acquisition of linguistical data can be turned into a word factory by implementing or enforcing a visionary legislation, and we do have the legislation, Law 109 of 2007 and 299 of 2015, but sadly it is not so well implemented. The member of the Academy, who is also charged with the library of the Academy, is here listening to me. Perhaps he doesn't know what I have in mind, but I'm thinking, why not publishing houses could donate book, of course complying with copyright in the meantime.
Informația textuală de acolo ar putea fi utilizată. Pentru asta ne trebuie o lege care să schimbe această lege a depozitului, unde doar cartea în format fizic trebuie depusă, să oblige editurile să lase o copie electronică a producțiilor lor digitale, care să fie utilizată în această întrepriză națională. Și poate că Uniunea Europeană ne-ar lua exemplu. Noi suntem cei care putem automata, noi informaticieni zic, acest proces. Dumneavoastră însă puteți face legea să funcționeze prin generarea continuă resurse românești și paralele. Mulțumesc!